Hello, how are you? I hope that you are all awake. We've had time to have some coffee. It's not immediately after lunch, so you're not that sleepy, and it's not the end of the conference just yet. So you're not looking at your watch, expecting the drinks. So I'm expecting your full attention, and that probably is a good thing or a bad thing for me. Let me start by introducing myself. My name is Jesús Rogel. I go by Jay. Because of obvious reasons, the bad pronunciation of the name, it never helps. If I get called the name that rhymes with cheeses, I feel like I probably should send people to hell or heaven, or at least cursing at them. So I prefer to be called Jay, and as some of my friends and colleagues call me, I go by Dr. Jay. I'm currently working for Barclays, and the reason that I'm here with you today is to share some of the stories, some of the journey that we've been having at Barclays, in particularly in the area of HR. And yes, I can see some people, when I mention that, they just go like, HR? Like, are you sure? Why are you not in cards and payments? I've got a colleague here from cards and payments, and we can talk about those things as well. But there are some reasons for that. And partly, it's the usage of data. We've been hearing a lot today about having one source of truth and using the data for the benefit of our consumers, or making decisions for the benefit of the business. But very rarely we talk about the benefits of the business internally. So we are all familiar with that customer-centered view. I don't have to convince you that companies like those that are in my slide have a presence. I bet that a few of us have an account with one or two or all three of them, and there are many more out there. And the reasons for using advanced analytics or predictive modeling or, God forbid, artificial intelligence are quite clear, right? So we are very happy as consumers to provide our data and make use of the recommendations that we may get for our next escapade in Lanzarote and staying at our nice house, where we can read the book that Amazon has given us a recommendation on based on the favorite film that we just watched in Netflix. And as consumers, we are happy with that. But what happens when we think about us as colleagues? The typical view of the colleague-centered view is something along those lines, where people say, HR, human resources, and people just go like, I'm not an asset, I'm a human, treat me with respect. Why would we not want to give to our colleagues the same recommendations that we give to our customers in terms of what's the next best action? They may be looking at policies that we offer, benefits that we provide, or business questions that are at the center of the organization in one way or another. And therefore, using one of the organization's mottos that we have at Barclays is creating a great place to work. And therefore, using the data that we have, not just for the benefit of our clients or of consumers, is important. How do we make that experience good for our colleagues as well? And analytics is no longer a good idea for HR. It is now mandatory. And the journey that we have gone through, it's probably not very different from other areas in the business that have started using data science or predictive analytics. But it certainly is an area where the maturity is not quite there yet. So about a year and a half ago, we started thinking about the services that we offer as a function, and taking a look at the questions that were coming our way. In that respect, we have an offering for the data that we have, and if you are managers of a team, you probably are interested to know how many people you have in your team, the headcount. You are interested in how many people you may be losing because people leave. And you may be interested to know when the next positions are going to be opened, and therefore you want to capture the right talent. And the typical use case that we see in a big organization, and I bet that that's the same for other organizations out there, is that there is what is called MI, reporting, right? So if I'm a manager, I go to the HR department, data department, and they say, can I get a report? And typically they, yes, Mr. Manager, here's your report, here's your headcount, here's how many people you have lost in that month. And that's the end of the story. The report is created. I can even, request for that report to be generated on a monthly basis. And so long and so forth, I don't change my requirements, I may be getting that report and getting a spreadsheet. However, what we were noticing were places where people were starting to ask questions. So yes, I get the report, but you see, I'm losing more people in this part of the organization than in that part, but I don't know why. And I don't know how to understand it because the spreadsheets have all the information, but I don't know what's happening. Is there anything else that we can do from that respect? And therefore, what we have taken the view is that we need to expand the offering that we have in this area to include the people analytics side of things. This is nothing new. People like Google have been doing people analytics for quite some time, and there are some companies out there that are moving into this space. And the idea is to take a look at the organization that we have, the culture that we have and that we want to achieve. Take a look at us as humans, so not forgetting the H in HR. So every data point that we have is not just an important one, it's one of our colleagues, right? And therefore, this has implications in terms of the experience that we can offer to them, but also it has legal ramifications and compliance ramifications in the same way that you may have that for customers, right? And then we want to make use of that data. So to give you an example of some of the questions that people may be interested in answering with the service of people analytics are some of those. From talent acquisition, you may be interested to know how you identify the critical talent pools that you have for an organization, and particularly in areas like the investment banking side of things, where regulators are not only interested in you having the appropriate resources, but also having appropriate succession planning, right? So if you have a CEO and that CEO, for whatever reason, is not there tomorrow, who is ready to step in, right? It's not just something that comes magically. You need to come up with some of those strategies there. Talent management. So what are those drivers of attrition? What are people staying in a role and staying successfully? How do we mentor them to move on to the next level of the hierarchy? And how do we reduce regrettable attrition and retain that top talent that we want to retain? Similarly, we would like to provide our colleagues the appropriate tools to grow as employees, right? So appropriate learning and development is important, and it's not just the objectives that you put to them. It's being able to offer them appropriate courses for the type of leadership that they want to become, or the type of programmer that they want to become later in life. So how do we define, assess, and develop those great leaders? How do we measure the impact of learning? So one of the examples that we had is, well, Jay, we had a couple of years of this new mentorship program that, it was created, it's been delivered, we have alumni coming out of those leadership projects. What's going wrong? And you just go like, well, I don't know. Let's start by looking at how do you measure the success. Oh, we don't measure the success. Okay, that's my first problem, right? Another example is workforce planning. So what is your talent strategy to grow in business, in key areas of your business, and how do you forecast talent demand and supply? And there are many more things that you could do there. Just to give you another example of a recent project that we've been doing, is we're interested to know, why our colleagues come and talk to HR, right? So some of them may be coming because they need to know what is the policy for maternity or paternity leave, and they just simply cannot find them, for example. So how do we make that journey easier? If we're making it easier for our clients, why don't we make it easier for our colleagues to do their role? So the framework, the people framework that we have put together there, and I would like to give a shout out to one of my colleagues in the team, Jose Alatrista, who's thinking for the following the slides is being quite important. So we are a people analytics team. We go with a people framework where we would like to partner, educate, organize, project, leverage, and enrich, and iterate at the same time. So let's go through this. Partner, we're interested in building an ecosystem. So this is very particular to big organizations, but some of this may be mapped to smaller ones. We have the function, the HR function, and we've got the organization per se. One of the things that we started doing was to get the buy-up of our senior managers to help us with funding, with shielding of the projects, and with setting the priorities. So we didn't want to start some projects that, one of the panelists earlier on saying, I want to do some really interesting stuff, but it doesn't have any value for the business. So getting together with the senior manager and management and deciding what are their strategies, what are their priorities, and therefore focusing on them has been quite important. Then we are interested in partnering sideways, in this case within HR. So in an organization like Barclays, we have at least 3 big organizations, the investment banking, the retail side, and we've got the services functions, right? So each of them would have a very different culture and very different needs, and therefore we need to partner with them to understand what it is that they need to do. And about a year ago that we started doing these things, partnering with them to start some POCs. So things that we could start making real with the data that we had. We had partners with technical teams because we needed to get the data, partners outside the function, so the actual businesses themselves, and external ecosystems like yourselves. We therefore once we have that in place, we are interested in covering the why, how, and what. So we're interested in offering that ultimate value to the HR function, and that HR function may be in terms of HR itself, talent acquisition, resourcing, business partnering, etc. And the way that we do these things is by providing an interface between the traditional MI, the reporting side of things, and the analytics, where we are providing probabilistic answers compared to deterministic ones. So our report would be, that's it, it's deterministic, you know what you're going to get out of that, but some of the analytics that we're doing is not. And therefore, having a look at that two-way exchange of understanding techniques and business domain becomes quite important. And in order to do that, we organize ourselves in this following process. We divide the way that we interact with the organization in 3 domains: the business domain, the product management domain, and the people science domain. I'll explain more about that in 1 second. And we have project management helping us orchestrate those layers there. An important aspect of this diagram is that product manager domain that serves as the interface between the science work that we want to do and that we appreciate doing, but we realize that we are not a research organization. We're not doing pure science. We're doing this for the business. Therefore, having those translators becomes quite important. So on the business side, we have the messy day-to-day business reality, the actual questions that we have and we need to answer. And there comes the ideation. They come with a particular question, and we need to partner with them. This is translated into a business question that provides a roadmap and a hypothesis creation, and very importantly, we need to get approval so that we can use appropriate data for that, the legal part that I was talking about at some point. Once we do that, we move into the people science domain when we transform those business questions into analytics questions. So how can we tackle that in an analytics way and use the data in a way that is able to answer those business questions? And in order to do that, we do things from exploratory data analysis, dashboards, modeling, and evaluation, all the way through to literature reviews, interviews, tool assessment, etc. And we have to do this in a context awareness way, and we use typical UX and UI techniques to help us with making these data answers real. Once we have the answers, and someone else in the panel were talking about this, is you go and talk about GANs, and you tell them how fantastic backpropagation may be, you lost them, right? So we need the support of that product manager to help us translate back to the business, and therefore move back to the function initiatives and the work that we need to complete. In terms of the projects, we would like to then become multidisciplinary. So one of the things that we have done is, typically in many organizations, you may be able to get one data scientist, but typically you end up with that situation, the lonely data scientist that needs to answer business questions and you don't know what you don't know and nobody tells you anything. What we have done is building the people science team. And the people science team is not just data scientists. In my team, we have partnered with different other skills, particularly, and very crucially, organizational behavioral scientists, whose input in some of the explanation of why certain policies exist and why we need to do certain things work from the point of view of understanding the organization, but also understanding the individual, right? And therefore, that becomes quite important, that data science plus organizational behavioral science. And we also realized that just a table of numbers is not very conducive to wowing the audience or even explaining some of the outcomes. And therefore, we've got a couple of data visualizations people helping us translate these into interactive visualizations that people can actually use and understand. From there, we organize ourselves into squads and guilds. So the guilds are the levels of expertise: data science, organizational behavioral science, data visualization, agile practitioners. And from each of those guilds, we form together a squad that goes and tackles one particular business question. And we therefore take those squads into extended ecosystem where we talk to chief data officer, the architectural IT delivery, data privacy, legal, etc. One of the things that we have done for this is to leverage every opportunity that we have. When we first started, there may be a number of projects that we wanted to do, but being a new function within an old function made it particularly hard because people were just like, well, I already have an analyst. Why are you bringing a data scientist? So we needed to look at the impact that we could have, whether it was minor or major, and look at the weaknesses and strengths of the projects that we were doing. So we're trying to leverage the opportunities that we have as they are presented. A year from when we started, we are doing more meaty projects of around 3 months each, with 2 squads, tackling problems in gender diversity, for example, and the other one about nurturing talent for leadership. And the thing that we would like to do is to enrich this by using deep analysis. Now, this is something important. Although we are doing data science, we may not have the richness of the retail side of things. I don't have millions and millions of customers. I only can play with 80,000 employees. So my data universe becomes quite small. So a lot of the work that we do may be predictive analytics with statistical learning. We don't see the need currently of going all the way with TensorFlow because the type of data that we deal with is not amenable to that. And therefore, we would like to have a look at the ideas that we have, plan our experiments accordingly in a scientific way, and develop a formal hypothesis that we can then go and test. And the way that we do this deep analysis is in the form of studies. So rather than tackling a project and coming up with a predictive model that tells me who's going to leave the organization, we have started the other way around. How about we understand the culture and the ecosystem that we have in place so that we can put together policies that enable us to do predictive modeling at a later stage in life. And that's the sort of products that we are dealing with. There you go. So our framework is that of looking at the people in the organization, where we partner to build an ecosystem. We educate not just ourselves, but the organization in general to gain a common understanding. We organize ourselves in an operating model that sets clear processes. The projects that we have become multidisciplinary, and that's the way that we would like to continue doing things. We are leveraging at every opportunity and setting up an agenda together with our senior stakeholders to match their strategy for the business, not just doing people analytics in a vacuum. And enrich what we do by enabling deep analysis. And once we have that organization, we're able to start iterating. I am running out of time, and with that, I would like to thank you. Remember that there is no I in team, but I leave you with that XKCD cartoon. And if you feel like contacting me, have any questions, because I've had like 8 seconds, you can find me at Twitter under Quantum Tunnel or at DT Science. Thank you very much for your time.